Hi, everyone. Yes, as Gabriel, right? Gabriel said, unfortunately, Raffaele couldn't make it today, so we're a little bit improvising, so apologies if it's not exactly what he was supposed to deliver today. I was part of the panel, so I'm going to ask myself question and ask them question. So it's going to be a little bit challenging. So we're going to move a little bit away from, I guess, the very ethereal side of software, I guess, to the real hardcore deep tech. I don't know how many of you, I guess a lot of you are familiar with deep tech. And within this sort of investment in VC space, it's quite a common thing that everybody talks about deep tech, but there isn't really a definition for what actually deep tech is. So we're going to the really hardcore, hardware side of deep tech. We have, a space company and an inertial system company, so really, really hardcore engineering. I'm an investor in deep tech. I've walked through sort of tech transfer, sort of spinning out companies from the University of Cambridge and in the physical science space, so always hardware-centric. And I moved to the VC world, and now I'm an advisor in Italy. I've grown in the UK as an investor, and now I'm an advisor in Italy for VC transactions in sort of the deep tech space. And I'm also starting a quantum software startup, so we're still in the very hardcore deep tech space. It's a very difficult space to be, and I think that's why Techtalia wanted to bring this here. It's not easy to grow deep tech companies. They're often very cash intensive. It takes a long time to get to revenues. And so it requires also investors that are understanding of this path. So I'm guessing this is what Raffaele wants to talk about. So I'm gonna let the others introduce themselves and introduce what their company do. And then, because they have very different histories, so it's gonna be very interesting to hear two different perspectives and of growing in Italy, which is, as you know, a nascent ecosystem. So, I don't know, Mattia, you want to go first, and then we'll have Andrea.
All right. Thank you very much, Olivia, for the introduction. I'm the CEO, CTO, and founder of Siderus Space Dynamics, a company involved in the development of a next-generation space transportation system, and in particular on the development of a new kind of space vehicle, which is called EOS, which is what I call the personal computer of launch vehicle. The idea is basically that if you can miniaturize with the improvement of the most recent technologies, for example, this is a piece of the rocket engine completely 3D printed, the development of a space vehicle, so space vehicles to carry satellites in space and then come back from space, you can shrink down sizes to an unmanageable level. So you can potentially shrink down a vehicle to 3.5 meters as it is right now. So something which can fit definitely inside this room. And yet you are capable of sending payloads to space, operate them, and return from space. Right now we are living in an historical moment in which is going to be remembered in the history as the planetary leap, in the moment in which we are facing the expansion through space. There are a lot of topics in deep tech which are right now on the front of reshaping completely our civilization, from to basically space transportation and quantum and so on and so forth. But with space right now we are still facing gigantic obstacles. Because getting to space in the first place to develop all of those kind of technologies is still as complicated as it was years ago. So developing a new kind of space transportation system would potentially allow for the expansion of humankind in space, and creating a system which is as small as a personal computer and as versatile as it was, as personal computers are, can potentially bring the same kind of revolution to the market and potentially even beyond to worldwide as a personal computer brought in the 80s. I'm the CEO and founder. I created the company 3 years ago. I've basically spent my last 8 years in development in the aerospace industry. And the company has started as a startup with the minimal amount of resources possible. Then we went through a small pre-seed round. Then we recently got 1.5 million euros from an Italian venture capital, two Italian venture capital actually. And then we basically, we are right now closing a new round of investment this year, and hopefully we've already tested successfully the main propulsion system of this engine. We're working with Italian Navy, the Ministry of Transportation, and all the authorities to allow for the launches from the beginning of next year. And by the end of next year, we're gonna see the first orbital flights. If everything goes right, by 2024, we're gonna start commercial operation. And all of this in an incredibly small amount of time, because the engines that we've created completely in-house, everything has been completely designed by us, by me personally, was created and done in just 2 weeks of time, with our own test facility that we opened here in Turin and Naples.
Mm-mm. Can you add how old you are? I guess that's quite significant.
I'm 21.
He's 21. So you started this company when you were 19, right?
18.
18, sorry. Yeah, so it's a very rare occurrence to see a deep tech company started so young. Yeah. Yeah. Well done, well done. Andrea, do you want to tell us about?
So we're doing inertial systems. You know what inertial systems are. So first of all, it helps the rockets to go up in the atmosphere. So they're basically boxes that measure, rotation and acceleration, and basically give out, two main functions: stabilization of a platform and orientation, navigation, with or without GPS. So being an autonomous, completely autonomous equipment, can really bring a rocket, from Earth, to the space without, the need of a GPS, because GPS, might be missed or jammed or not available if you're, for example, underwater. The company, I started the company, I'm the CEO of the company, and my name is Andrea Pizzarulli, and I started the company in 2012, so 10 years ago. From a startup, so usual garage. It was only me into the company, and now we are 140 people. We made 25 million revenues last year, and we actually made an IPO in February 2022. So we went from 500K investment from initial strategic investors, up to an IPO, through reinvesting all the profit that we have been doing in the last 10 years. Electronic engineer by, let's say, nature. I spent, 5 years of my life in the Silicon Valley in California, where I've been infected by this entrepreneurial spirit and the dynamism of the area. And I had the courage to come back. You would say, well, you had the courage to go to the US. No, I had the courage to come back, not to go there.
I so agree.
Which of course, I don't regret. And, I really think that, Italian, life of style is great. They're great engineers. We really miss everything else, although, that I'm trying to, bring back, from the States. I always say, learning experiences, understanding what is wrong about your culture and getting the good thing of the other culture, and vice versa. So I tried to do that, and coming back, I started this company, and I really tried to make, a good use of the engineering force in Italy, with the very customer-oriented, market-oriented, and programmatic-oriented way of doing business in the US.
Yeah.
So that's pretty much my story.
Yeah, no, that's okay. I think it would be interesting to hear a little bit more about your growth, because you basically bootstrapped the company. I'm oversimplifying, which for deep tech, for who doesn't know, it's a rarity. For hardware deep tech, it's really like pretty much impossible. So yeah, 10 years, from sort of garage to get into an IPO, being pretty much, still owning pretty much all your company. How does one do that?
Yeah, it was a hard one. So 10 long, very nice years. So first of all, I think, we tend to the beginning, so we went through all the, spectrum of funding, necessities. So at the very beginning, I was going to the banks asking for a loan, and they would say, well, can I have the last 2 years balance sheet?
Yeah, right.
I don't have it. I'm just starting it. So banks, no option. Then venture capitalists, you always have the issue of, not, valuing, very well, your business. So we found some strategic investors. So investors that, were in the business or in related business that could really appreciate and understand the business model. And we raised a very small amount of money. With that amount of money, we bootstrapped the company, putting together a great team. I think that's really was the key. We were, extremely expert from different, area. For example, myself, my colleague of mine from telecommunication, fiber optic telecommunication. How is related fiber optic telecommunication with, inertial sensor? I'll tell you in a minute. Automotive, defense, aerospace. So putting together all this expertise, we were able to innovate, in a navigation, business that is as old as Marco Polo. They used to have a navigation system. So we've been able to innovate that. How? Well, we did not invent the instrument, which already exists. It's a compass. It's a navigation system, but we reinvented the technology around that. So the usual approach of company like Honeywell, Northrop Grumman, Thales, Safran, those large giant company, was to create specific components, specific technologies for the inertial sensors. We took a completely different path. This means, high capex, high costing component. So for us, being a startup, we could not afford, capex, so large investment in capital, in infrastructure. So what we said is the following: let's take components out of industry that scale up with large economies, fiber optic telecom, here it is, automotive and consumer electronics. Those components are excellent and are driven by, capex that we spend, by our supplier, not by us. It is relatively simple to say, but gathering all these components and make a high performance, fiber optic based, inertial sensors and technology is not that easy. So that's the technology bit that we put together. But once you've done that, you really have the lowest, possible bill of cost of material for that hardware, and then you start to build up, software and application and value on top of this hardware. But as you said, we do, deep tech hardware, but every metaverse, every software needs a hardware to run on it. So
absolutely.
It's the basic of, so you know that.
Yeah, it kind of depends a little bit. Yeah, it can be very capital intensive on the software side too. But maybe Mattia, you can tell us a little bit about your growth, which was, probably more classical, VC backed, and maybe a little bit about, the type of investors that you chose. Space is really hot right now, so I guess, it's not that capital is not an issue. It's always difficult to fundraise. I don't want to, make it sound easy, but it's really hot topic. So maybe you can tell us a little bit about your fundraising path.
Yeah, for sure. When I opened Siderus, I came out of 2 international competition from the European Space Agency, NASA, and the Indian Space Agency that I won. I received an office in the University of Alabama, Huntsville, yet I was 17 years old, so I was too young to open a company. But I already moved from the academic world to the entrepreneurial world, because I thought that was the only way in which you can drive a significant, potentially groundbreaking technology and bring it to the market in reasonable amount of time. Academics, especially here in Italy, are not really that popular in terms of resources, not really that capable in terms of resources. But in general, in the world, if you can drive a system, this is the idea, the basis of this company. If you can drive any kind of technological development, even groundbreaking, with a solid market behind, and you can demonstrate it in a reasonable amount of time, finding those resources is not a problem, and you can potentially innovate much more than anyone can do. So I've decided to open a company a couple of years before that, and then when I had the chance, for an angel investor, I opened the company with the minimal amount of resources. And obviously we're talking about development of an entire space vehicle out of the blue. Nothing that we have on board was designed for space in the first place. So it was something that was completely upon us. And I basically conceived this vehicle. I've proven and demonstrated the small subsystems, received 60K, so still a minimal amount, but was enough for me to build the first prototype of this vehicle. And I built it. I created with basically roughly 5,000 euros the entire prototype of this subsystem with all the technologies, and then when looking for investors. When I created Sidereus, space was not really that hot of a topic because just the year before, Rocket Lab, the company from New Zealand, demonstrated that a small launch vehicle could be made completely privately in the new space economy. So it was very tough to find resources. Yet we managed to demonstrate and prove that the development of a technology out of the blue in just 6 months was definitely something that was doable. My first office was actually in a skyscraper, so not really the place in which you are used to look for to see.
Not a garage.
Not a garage, not even a garage. But after that prototype, we managed to find Primo Ventures, CDP Venture Capital, and basically they trust us for the development of the following system, which was proving the propulsion system, which is the core of this entire launch vehicle. And we got roughly 1 million, and we demonstrated the propulsion system in 6 months and worked successfully. It was the fastest rocket engine ever designed and built, probably. And then basically we got the remaining resources. Now we are about to close a new round of investment, and we're about to go orbital. That's pretty much it.
That's really interesting. I'm going to ask a devil's advocate question. Do you think you could have had that initial bit of money or that space, and was it Alabama University that gave you, the possibility to start if you were in Italy? Because I found like NASA, everything was US based, kind of.
Yeah, pretty much. Actually, the company started in Naples, and now we have the test facility in Turin as well. The Alabama office was useful, especially because one of the key points is whenever you go into development of the deep tech technologies, is the credibility of developing such a system. Yeah. So if nobody has trust you in the first place, nobody will trust you any further along the way. For example, creating a prototype and proving that can be developed, designed, and built completely. When I was alone, actually, and then 2 other guys came on board, Massimiliano and Luca. Then now the team is made out of 10 engineers. Still a very small amount of engineers for the task we are targeting. Yet we've went through a serious selection process to find the most brilliant minds out there. But without the initial credibility from US, actually I wasn't supposed to win that competition in the first place because I was too young for that. Yeah. But the US side decided to change the rules just for because little fine-tune the rules, let's say, to adapt the rules for the occasion. And I got to start in that way. Then Caronte, Virgilio, and Beatrice, those are the name of the 3 prototypes.
I love it.
And Caronte, through the most difficult part of the hell, actually, was the one that helped me the most to demonstrate those kind of technologies. So.
Yeah, I'm just going to make a little parenthesis about me, but I think there is a very big difference that I've noticed between the UK ecosystem, so I can only imagine about the US ecosystem mapped on the Italian, both venture capital and startup ecosystem. We're still, I think, very much lacking behind that vision that, I see a 17 years old, man that is like really smart, like very fun idea. Let's make room for him. I think, we don't have data for this. That would have hardly happened in Italy. Everything is very much by the book, I think. And we're still missing that as well as many other things within the ecosystem. But you do have Italian backers, though, like the VC funds that you have right now. And this coming round, is it going to be an Italian one? Do you see a difference between, have you tried speaking with, European or American investors? Do you see a difference from a sort of startup side? Yeah,
we received 1.5 million euros when basically we were just working on a scratch prototype. So it was a pretty peculiar situation also especially for an Italian venture capital, but also in the US, it was pretty tough to get those kind of resources that quickly. So it was, let's say, a very peculiar case. But in general, finding resources in Italy, I always compare Italy and the US like running a marathon in a jungle or in the desert. when you do it in a jungle, you have a lot of resources available to take a break and to go ahead. Yet, jungle makes you move slower due to all of the obstacles that there might be, because there is more competition, because there is an environment which has different rules or more complicated rules, yet everything regulated. In Italy, the other way, instead you have a desert, which there are still resources, though very few, and but there are no obstacles. So there are very few competitors. There is a lot of room to demonstrate that you can do something like that. We are trying to bring to the market a groundbreaking technology, which is per se difficult, whether it is in the US or in Italy. But you have to take advantage of the environment you can find around. I use always necessitas artium mater. Necessity is the mother of the arts, and that's I think pretty helpful.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. I think there is a lot of opportunity in Italy. It's a growing ecosystem. There's cash injection coming from Europe and coming from the Italian government. We have to really, use that wisely, I think, and really push on deep tech, because we have a lot of talent. You've talked about your fundraising history. I guess my question is, why did you decide not to go with VC? At some point, there is 10 years between when you started to IPO.
Yeah.
Never in those 10 years did you have a moment to it would be nice to not be cash. I don't know. I don't really know your cash history, so maybe you made money from day three.
No. It's a good question. I mean, in our growth, we always been focused on, growing the company. What you want to do? We want to grow the company, and we were lucky and also strategically, capable to manage a few partnership, a few technology transfer, a few, distribution channel, so that we could start the business and generating cash almost immediately. After 2 years we were cash flow positive, and then we start to reinvest all this money to the growth, completely devoted to the growth. We made 2 mini bonds, which is unusual again, for a startup company, but our business case was supporting that. And then at the end, we say, well, we want to grow differently. We want to maintain control of the company because we think we can run it. Me and the co-founder, which is in the US, and we decided to go public. I mean, no VCs in the middle. Sorry.
Thank you so much. So I think we're going to open for questions from the public, if there are any. Just one question, sorry. They say from the... Yes.
Hello. It's interesting to see how different approach you guys have on starting the business. So you can see developing a new technology from scratch, basically. So developing a whole new, groundbreaking technology. You said from scratch, which gives you a lot of space to move around and define what you want to do and create your own tool or your own technology to support the business that you want to make. And on the other side, if I have understood, it was basically, you started, the hardest part was integrating existing objects and technologies and build on top of that your product. So this is very different approach, and I understand they both have their benefits and definitely the downsides. I'm very interested in what was the hardest part in developing the business from the object or from the system perspective. What was the hardest part in your journey using, I build everything from scratch and I have constraints because I use existing technologies, but then I can start from there. I'm interested in the differences in this kind of approach.
Andrea, you go first.
Okay. I mean, many difficulties all over the place, and especially for any entrepreneur. Any entrepreneur is paranoid, about keeping a step forward, compared to where you are. So you're right. I mean, there's always a continuous attention to, okay, this is my competitive advantage. First difficult task, let's make this competitive advantage make a profit, meaning, finding a customer, being able to support the customer, and, generating, cash, so that you can reinvest this money to create new technologies that can be, software around that hardware, or can be a specific component that you can do, as we are doing, for example, using technologies, again, in other industry, which are, leveraged, on a specific, proprietary component, which makes another competitive advantage. And, going forward like that, we started from making inertial sensors to making equipment that measure, that are used for stabilization and navigation. And now we're making, systems, which means control systems, and integrating, many functionality into the same core. The same core is the same of 10 years ago, but we're adding, value, which means, keeping, the technology edge sharp, and, staying ahead of the competition. That's the continuous difficulties. But it's an alchemy, right? Because, you are creating a technology, your customer tell you what you want, what he wants, but doesn't really know what he wants in terms of a new product, because you are the one that knows, what the new technology will be. So it's always, very craft, situation where you end up to have a new technology for a new product, and a customer adopts it, and then, you continue like that. It's very difficult. That's, I think is the most difficult part. Creating a technology and bring it to the market. I think that's the difficult one.
Yeah.
From my other perspective, instead, developing a technology out of scratch gives you a degree of freedom which you obviously don't have when you are working with existing hardware. For example, we have invented a new technology which is capable of throttling the engine, increasing the efficiency by much more, and making this vehicle basically truly the personal computer of launch vehicle. Obviously, with commercial off-the-shelf, such a thing wouldn't be possible. But the major obstacles that you find is that you have to prove all of the technology you claim you can do, because otherwise you are literally looking for investors which have to trust you on your faith, and obviously that is not how it works. So, for example, for the development of new technologies, you have to open a facility, because here in Italy we don't have a lot of experimental facility, and this is one of the things I complain the most, because when you want to demonstrate a technology very rapidly, the thing you have to care the most is demonstrate it. And to do it, you can't really wait for a month just to have a free facility to do the test. So we have created an experimental test flight facility. We are testing rocket engines. We did all by ourselves. So you have to do a lot of complementary work around, which is not needed, obviously, if you have a product which is already qualified for the goal. That it becomes that is up to you. And then furthermore, nobody tells you whether this thing has to be tuned in this way or in the other. If you see, those are the cooling channel of those rocket engines. Nobody tells you what are the sizes. And you have to figure it out with the knowledge and the experience. But it's very hard to have such a broad experience over propulsion, structure, guidance, navigation, and all of those kind of things. So you find yourself in a much more difficult environment, because it's in a difficult environment, because obviously you have to figure out all of the technological problems by yourself, and you have to make it reliable, because another important thing is that if this thing works one time every 10 launches, obviously it's not really useful as a product. The advantage on the other side is that you get a significant degree of freedom on what you want to do, which makes you push for the innovation on the direction you want. So that is...
Yeah. I can add, maybe, yeah, we're going to wrap up, but I can add, because we haven't really talked about the quantum software startup that I work on with other co-founders, but there is the added thing, maybe added level of complexity. We're pretty much like Sideria's case. We are, building something completely new that doesn't exist. But on top of that, the market kind of doesn't exist either, and the software stack kind of doesn't exist either. I mean, there are players, they're trying to find their space, so everything is moving at the same time. So there is an added complexity of how do I build something that people will want, that they don't know they will want, because people still, there are some good companies that are very for using quantum computers, but JP Morgan's, Roche, they're pushing, but there is a lot that needs to be defined, and how do you stay ahead yourself as a CEO? I'm the CEO of the company, but also how do you convey this to investors and stakeholders, and how do you build a vision that is gonna take all of this into account. It's the beauty and the difficulty, I think, of deep tech. It's a very yin-yang situation, but it's what makes it exciting and fun.
Indeed.
Like, you know, the previous talk was stressing. Yeah, I think we'll wrap it there because I get signals from the back. But thank you, Mattia, thank you, Andrea, for being here.
Thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.